Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. I'm Kayla and it's time to crack into a good book. So today I thought I would do one of these urban fantasy recommendations videos because I realized I hadn't done one in a while. So today's theme is going to be all about alternate history. So I think this is kind of a different feel to a lot of the other urban fantasy books that I've talked about in this series. And, you know, like some of these are maybe a little bit of a stretch to classify as urban fantasy, but we're going off of how I classified them based on how I feel about them, so here we are. Anyway, I have 4 series that I'll talk to you about today. Before we get started, leave a cactus emoji in the comments to let me know that you're here. So the first book I'll talk about is Breach by W.L. Goodwater. So this is the first book of this Cold War magic series, and I think there are only 2 books out. Now, I've only read the first one, but it looks like I did rate it 4 stars. The Berlin Wall is just made entirely of magic, and a breach unexpectedly appears in the wall, so spies from both sides are kind of like coming into the city as World War III threatens to spark. Soviet magicians conjured this arcane wall to blockade this occupied Berlin, and the world was outraged but let it stand just for the sake of peace. But after 10 years of fighting with spies instead of spells, the CIA has discovered the unthinkable, that the wall is failing. So refugees and soldiers mass along the border, and operatives from east and west converge on the most dangerous city in the world to either stop the crisis or take advantage of it. So we follow Caine, who is a young magician with the American Office of Magical Research and Deployment, and she's sent to investigate this breach in the wall and determine if it could be fixed. Instead, she discovers that the truth is elusive in this divided city and that even magic itself has its own agenda. So I'll be honest, I don't remember that much about it. I don't even remember when I read this. It's been a hot minute. I think this was maybe back in early 2019 or 2018. But yeah, so I think this was an interesting take. I don't think I've read that much Cold War alternate history, so that was pretty cool, and I think it has a lot of thriller elements to it. I think it's a really interesting idea to have magic involved in, you know, like World War II stuff. Magic had been used in World War II often by the Nazis, so it has kind of a negative connotation to it. You know, in this world, magicians are kind of they have a mixed image, I guess, you know, like obviously with the World War II stuff, like that's not great. So I think there's a lot of fear still about magicians, but at the same time, I think you also have people admiring magicians, especially with like the younger generations, like magic is pretty cool. With this particular era, Karen does have to struggle with some sexism. She, I think, from what I remember, is one of like the few female agents. So there's a lot of backlash that she faces with a lot of her like male coworkers thinking that she's not really up to the job. And so she's really trying to prove herself and figure out what's going on with this wall. She does tend to be impulsive at times and like is not always the most likable character, but she is pretty interesting to follow from what I remember. You know, I don't think the magic stands out as something particularly unique, but I think it's just really an interesting idea to think about like the Berlin Wall being made out of magic and failing and everything. So yeah, I mean, I think for me it was enjoyable, but I still have not picked up the sequel, which came out in 2019, so like do with that what you will, I guess. I don't know if it's a duology or if it just like never went anywhere. I think in the second one, Karen goes to Cuba, and I think there's like revolution happening in Havana, and Karen is searching for some sort of missing girl. Reading the premise of the second one, like it still does sound kind of interesting to me, so this is something that like I may or may not continue. I don't know if it's like, of these books, it's probably the one that I would rank lower, and that's why I've listed it first, but I think it was still enjoyable enough that I would recommend it if you are interested in this premise. The next series that I'll talk about is the Gunny Rose series by Charlaine Harris, and the first book is An Easy Death. Now, I've only read the first book here as well, but I did rate it 5 out of 5 stars, and I think so far there are 3 books out in the series. The third one just came out in February or so. This is, again, this alternate history where I think FDR was assassinated, and the US has been kind of split up into different parts, and some of it is still like the US, but some of it's controlled by England, some of it's controlled by, I think, Mexico. There's also, like, California, I want to say, is controlled by Russia. So it's a lot of different, you know, interesting factions that you've got going on. This does have a pretty cool Western feel, which is something that I have found that I enjoy, so I've liked seeing this take on it, I guess. You know, we've got magic, and we follow our main character, Elizabeth, and she is a gunny. So she is this gunslinging woman, and she's basically hired to escort this pair of Russian wizards to locate this magic practitioner. And they basically think that this person that they're looking for is a descendant of Rasputin, and there are reasons why he is needed. So this was a really fun book. It's very fast paced. It's not super long, so it's like a kind of like a nice breath of fresh air. You know, like it's a very quick read, super fun. I will say, oh, what am I doing? I own this book. I don't know why I'm not showing it to you. Anyway, here it is. This particular edition has the smallest damn font I have ever seen. Like, I don't know if you can see that, but it is ridiculously small. So, like, if you are to get this book, I would maybe suggest not getting this particular edition because it was so hard to read. But anyway, that is beside the point. I mentioned this more Western feel, and so it is a pretty gritty world. You know, you've got bandits on the road as well. Obviously, Lisbeth being a gunslinger, like, that definitely evokes this Western feel. Some people die, definitely. It is brutal. You're fighting against these bandits for your life. The magic was pretty interesting. I really liked the Grigories, which are like these Russian wizards. I thought they were pretty fun. I think, from what I remember, we have some interesting creatures as well, kind of like zombies. I think Lisbeth in particular was really great to follow. She's this badass woman. Again, she's this gunslinger and competent at her job, and like, I don't know, she's just fantastic. She's loyal and has a sense of honor, and I think, you know, she's not afraid to do what's necessary as well. Like, she will protect her clients or whatever and kill people if necessary. I think there was a bit of a romance that was starting to develop, and I'm still curious to see what happens with that. But we do have this interesting, like, group dynamic, obviously, with Elizabeth escorting these Grigories everywhere. I really had a good time with this. I'm not sure why I have not continued the series yet. It's something like, I keep almost buying the second book and then not doing it for some reason. I don't know. I think like they did change the covers at some point in the series, and so I'm like, oh, which edition do I want? I don't know. It's a mess. But anyway, I definitely want to continue the series. I think if you're looking for something that's really fast-paced, has this gritty Western type feel, I would definitely suggest picking this up. So the next series that I'll talk about is the Dead Djinn universe by P. Djeli Clark, and I recently read all of these and talked about it, but it's set in Egypt in 1912. You kind of have this alternate history, I guess, where, you know, this guy opened up a veil between worlds and let, you know, like, magic in, essentially. But you also have, like, these steampunk elements, so this one, I mean, I would still classify it as urban fantasy, so that's why I'm going to talk about it. But anyway, I think I'll leave my video where I talk about these more in depth with all the reviews linked down below, so I'm not like just repeating myself. I would suggest starting with the Dead Djinn in Cairo. It is a short story and it's available to read on Tor.com. Same thing with the Angel of Caine el-Khalili. So I'll try to remember to leave both of those linked down below so you can just read them online. But I think the thing that stands out to me the most about this particular universe is the world building. It is a very cool world. Like I said, you have these steampunk elements, but you also have Djinn, these like mechanical angel beings. There seems to be more creatures like goblins and fae, at least introduced in the most recent book, A Master of Djinn. So I guess to give you the quick rundown of how I rated these, I rated A Dead Djinn in Cairo 4 stars, The Angel of Caine el-Khalili 3.5 stars, The Haunting of Tram 15 3 stars, and then A Master of Djinn 4 stars. So it's a series that I have definitely enjoyed. A Dead Djinn in Cairo, there's this really nice murder mystery, and it does do a good job of introducing you to the world. And we also get to follow Fatma, who is definitely, I think, my favorite character of this series. She is one of the few female investigators at this Ministry of Alchemy, Enchantments, and Supernatural Entities. And she's just pretty badass. She like is very independent. She wears suits, does her own thing. We get a pretty nice romance with her over the course of the books that I've really enjoyed. So, you know, there's kind of, I guess, the brief overview of that. And then the Angel of Caine el-Khalili, we get to learn more about these, you know, mechanical angel beings, which is just such a cool idea. Oh my god, I can't like emphasize that enough. Again, this is a very short story, but you can read it for free online. This particular angel is kind of ominous, like it's a seeker of truth, and we'll just say like the truth can be painful. So I don't know, I think it's really cool to get to see these angels because like they're not the angels that you typically think of. we'll just leave it at that. The Haunting of Tram 15, it's kind of also this mystery of like what's haunting the tram car and how do they get rid of it. But we do follow another character in this ministry. I didn't personally find him as interesting as Fatma, but he does come up in A Master of Djinn, so it was nice to be introduced to him first, and I think the events in this particular novella are referenced also in A Master of Djinn, so it was nice for me, like, having read all of this before jumping into the full-length book just to have like all that background information. But again, it's such a cool world, so like, why not read it? With A Master of Djinn, it is a full-length novel. I think there are some pacing issues sometimes, but it does really pick up by the end, and it has a lot of really great ideas, again, with this world, but you also have some, like, discussions about racism and sexism. It's kind of introduced in A Dead Djinn in Cairo, but we have these idolaters who worship the ancient Egyptian gods, and they kind of play, you know, a bigger part in A Master of Djinn, and I really liked it. Like I said, I guess in my review, like, I'm a huge fan of mythology in general, but I really like the Egyptian gods in particular, so this was super cool for me to be able to see this. I think this book reminded me, in part, with some aspects of the Goodwater trilogy, which I really love. You know, I think we have some really cool characters. Again, Fatma, we do get to follow Fatma in A Master of Djinn, and she's just really great. I have this romance that develops with her, but she's also kind of thrown into this reluctant mentor type role where she's paired with Hadia, who is just also wonderful. She is a younger female investigator, and, you know, I think is more earnest, but she's like super competent, she's very intelligent, and it's nice to see like how their bond changes and how their partnership works really well together. I had a really good time with this, and it's definitely a world that I want to continue reading more about. Hopefully we get more installments of this, but I definitely recommend that. So then the final series that I'll talk to you about today is Ink and Bone by Rachel Caine. So this is the first book of the Great Library series, and there are 5 books out. It is a completed series, and I rated all of them, I think, 5 stars. So I do really like Rachel Caine's writing, and I think this is such a fun series. So it's this alternate history where the Great Library at Alexandria didn't burn down, and so now they're kind of in charge of the written word, which is not great. There are some ideas, I think, of censorship here, and basically, you know, the plot here is like the library can deliver the written works through this alchemy, but you cannot personally own books, which, like, clearly that would be a problem for me based on how many books I own. But anyway, so we have a group of characters who all, you know, end up going to the library to train to, like, enter the library service. So we mostly follow Jess, who comes from a family who, like, sells books illegally on the black market. And he's sent to be a spy at the library, but his loyalties are tested once he enters the library service. And basically one of his friends in this group, like, accidentally commits a heresy. It does become an issue of, like, do we fight back against the library? Is it wrong that they are controlling everything? So it was really awesome. I really love the series. I think with these group of characters, you have people from around the world, so it is a pretty diverse cast, I think. Oh yeah, there is actually a male-male romance in here as well, and we have some really nice relationships that develop. It's also nice to just see, like, some of our characters really love books, and I think they have to face some, like, conflicted values with how they perceive the library, and it's just so exciting. All of our characters have different roles to play, so you get to see how, I guess, the different factions within the library itself function. There are some interesting bits of magic, well, alchemy, I guess. I think there is some magic in there as well, from what I remember. There's also some, like, really interesting automatons, I think, and I seem to remember there being some really exciting action scenes. I think in one of them there was a scene that reminded me of Indiana Jones. There is some travel around the world, but, you know, I like that we are in Alexandria. Like, I guess clearly I mentioned, I guess, with the Dead Djinn universe, I do like Egypt as a setting. With this whole not being able to own books, the black market is particularly interesting. Like, I seem to remember there are, I can't remember what they're called, but there's, like, people who pay extra for books so then they could just eat them. It is very bizarre. It's a really interesting idea to see, like, what society would be like if, you know, we had this level of censorship and, like, not being able to personally own books. Like, the black market in particular would be a problem, I would think. Overall, I just really love this series. I think Rachel Caine's writing is very easy to read, very easy to get into. Obviously, I enjoyed all of the books that I mentioned, but this is probably my favorite series of the ones that I mentioned today. So that'll do it for today's recommendations. Let me know in the comments if you've read any of these books or think you might pick them up. And for your question of the day, do you enjoy alternate history books? So I do have a Discord channel, and if you want to join that, the link is in the description below. I hope you're all having an excellent day and are reading something awesome. If you enjoyed this video, feel free to give it a big thumbs up, as that would certainly help me out. But with that, I think I'm going to wrap it up here and see you in the next one.